Hello traders, this is Rich from Tradesight. This is the market preview for Thursday, May 22nd, 2014. Another update today with the ES tacking on 17 and the NASDAQ showing a little bit of relative strength, plus 37. Market internals were pretty good today, but they weren't nearly as strong as they were weak yesterday. We were plus 900 issues on New York, and the NASDAQ was only up plus about 550 issues, which isn't really much to show for after being up 1%. Let's take a look at the pure price action first. Here's a look at the ES, still basically just kind of slugging sideways here, just kind of bracketing around this 1875 area. One small technical point here is that we did make a new 5-day high on this close, potentially putting this previous high in place. We did close the gap officially here that was open for the first time, so that's something to cross off the bulls list to do, which actually could be a negative for the market overall. Here's a look at the NQ futures. The NQ futures did make a new multi-week high, which is a little bit more impressive than what we did on the NASDAQ side, pushing back up above this this trend line here that we've been using. So we definitely could see some higher prices in NASDAQ as we try to push higher. This is definitely a welcome development. Notice the little pickup in volume here, which is also welcome. It was higher than the down volume from the previous day. So the bulls definitely have something to build on here, but they really need to get it in gear and start to shape up the market internally. As we had said before, we're only plus 550 issues or so on the NQ side. Here's the cumulative advanced decline lines on the New York side. We're still basically positive, but essentially lateral right now. The NASDAQ side is the one that's really been the problem. We're positive today. We did not make a new lower low here, so we have to see if we can qualify this and take out this previous high here in the cumulative line. If we do that, we're actually going to change this to short-term positive, which would be an important development, which we haven't really been able to do really since March when we started rolling to the downside. So definitely we're going to keep on top of this, and we're certainly going to look at the weekly levels as well. Haven't looked at this one in a while, but this is the Dow Gold ratio. Dow Gold ratio has been effectively lateral for the last couple of sessions here. But what we're going to see here is that we're finally in a position where we can maybe see something happen here, where we can start to push a little bit higher. Here's a look at the this little trend that we've been in. We've been really boxed up here with neither risk on nor risk off being asserted in the Dow. This is kind of a problem though, because the Dow's been making new highs, but the Dow Gold ratio really hasn't been moving in favor of the Dow. That really just means that there's been no real swap in assets. So to really get a good breakout and run to the high, we want to see this little area here taken out and break to the upside in favor of the Dow. As long as we're contained here, that really means there's really no good net money flows and conviction to the market. So we really want to see this little range start to be resolved here on a little better basis. Here's a look at the SOX versus the NDX. What we've seen here is a series of lower highs and basically this neckline. I'm just going to move this trend channel up here. If we break this to the downside, this is going to be real negative, because that's going to really start to show some relative weakness on the part of the semiconductors. And having the biotechs already had run their course and start to roll down, we need some other leadership. And if it's not the BTK, you really need the SOX to start to kick in and show something to the upside here. I think this is one of the principal reasons that the market internally on the NASDAQ side has been so weak. So we really want to see this start to turn up and do a little bit better here for some better trades and some long-lasting strength on the NASDAQ side. All right, here's a look at the NDX versus the S&P on a relative ratio basis. You see that we definitely made another new high here, so we're certainly seeing some positive price action here with the NDX starting to reassert itself. We could easily travel up to this trend line here in this key ratio before we start to see the NDX start to pull back from its assertion here and start to see less relative strength. So for now, definitely keep an eye on the more high beta names, continuing back to the upside until we hit the top of this ratio. The banks were kind of unimpressive today, while a lot of these high beta names were pretty strong today. So definitely keep a keep a bias in favor of the NDX continuing to outperform here, at least in the near term. Here's our relative performance chart of the major sectors, especially the late cycle stuff. Had a pretty good day today in the oil services, which rolled back to the upside. The transports, which is the purple line here, was still contained below the previous high. Need to get a breakout there, which would be very, very positive. You can see kind of the muted response here in the banks. They were positive, but certainly unimpressive. And the XAU is just kind of slugging along here, kind of just dragging its heels for now. All right, here's another important chart to take a look at. This is the XAU, which or the gold mining shares. That's the white line here, and the actual gold futures, which is the yellow line. What generally happens is, especially to the downside, the XAU will lead gold price. You can see it back here at the beginning of the fourth quarter last year. We had had a divergence here where the XAU was starting to roll to the downside while gold prices were still hanging up higher. Gold prices ultimately succumbed as the XAU led the way. We saw the same thing happen here in the beginning of March. We're starting to see that again here, where the XAU, the gold mining shares, are underperforming gold itself. Gold's been in this very, very tight lateral trading range, and right now the XAU is starting to suggest that that gold prices are probably going to pull to the downside. So definitely keep an eye on that, especially with the strength recently that we've seen in the dollar, and the dollar trying to reassert itself against its major trading partners. Could be a big trade here in the gold futures to the downside, or the GLD if you prefer to trade the ETFs. So definitely keep that in mind, and be ready for that perhaps next week. Here's a look at the individual sectors ranked from best to worst. The broker-dealers, Top Gun. The XOI, which we like to see kind of towards the top, was fairly strong. The oil services was also strong, which is important. Then you want to look at the transports. The transports performed just fine today. Definitely want to see them wind up and take that previous high. The laggards were commodity-related equities, and also just the general cyclical index was pretty darn weak today. But let's take a look at a couple of the charts now. Here's a look at the OSX. Was not able to take out the 50, but did play with it today. That'll be the first thing that needs to be done. Need to kind of game this 50, take it, and then get up and take a shot at this 8 ace level. We did make a little bit of a turn. We did not close above the 10 EMA, so we are still short-term negative. Unfortunately, we closed kind of in the bottom half of the day's range, which is also a negative, but we do have something to build on here. So right now we're just sandwiched between the 200 period moving average and the 50, which makes it kind of neutral, and we definitely need to get above the 10 period moving average so we can potentially start looking at these higher levels. So the 50 period moving average remains the key at about 288. To the downside, we're going to have critical support at the 200 period moving average at about 277 3/4. Transports starting to just grind here in this overbought area of the Gann box, still above the 10 period moving average, which is a positive. If we take out these levels, we'll quickly shoot up to plus 2 ace at 79.68, 79.69 area. Other thing I wanted to talk about today, the BTK index, still winding up, still going sideways here, not really being able to break out. So once we do break out of this range, we should have a fairly decent move. Keep in mind though that the 50 period moving average does have a pretty good downward slope to it now. XAU, as we talked about earlier, remains weak. This 0 ace level at 87.50 is really critical. If we lose that and start to roll to the downside, we're going to have a problem. We do have a 13 exhaustion in place on this, but the count is very much lateral. Here's your one candle at about 92, and your 13 candle printed at about 89.5. So there's very little going on as far as downside activity and exhaustion to the downside. So it wasn't really extended to the downside. So really, it's probably just the end of an impulse and probably going to mark more, but just a sideways movement for the market. Last up, let's take a look at the transports. which we looked at before. I just want to circle back this one more time. I forgot to talk about the MACD. MACD is still positive, but starting to level off now, and we don't want to see that start to fail and cross over. So the other thing we want to watch is the overall level of the MACD there. The oil futures had a very, very strong day today, actually settling above the static trend line, which is a positive for the bulls. So we're potentially pushing back up into the old highs here. The MACD is above the zero line, so we do have some decent momentum now. And I think that's why we got that big jump today in a big candle today, with oil futures up about $1.50, was because we're finally getting some upward momentum. So big levels coming up just ahead, overhead about 104.5 there. And then we'll talk about gold. Gold is just lateral still. We do have the potential of recording 13 bars down, perhaps even this week on Friday, but we'll see. The movement here from 1 to 13 is going to be totally lateral. So really, it's just kind of marking time here. So as we talked about before, with the 13 exhaustion in place, with the XAU is pretty lateral and probably going to wind up pulling gold prices down unless we really make good on that single signal, which I don't think is going to happen, just because it didn't have a lot of extension to the downside. All right, folks, as always, thanks for listening. This has been Rich for Tradesight.